Alright guys, so we're going to start to work on a little bit of access control and also like getting stories for particular users. But what I want to do first is I want to sort the main stories page by date. And that's really easy. All we have to do is go to our routes, stories.js, go to our get slash, and just add in here a dot sort. And we're going to say we want to sort by the date. And we want that to be descending. And we'll save that. Let's reload. And now it's going to be by date. So it'll be the most recent stories first. So now what I want to do is I don't want to be able to, we're going to take care of these icons, but I don't want to be able to go to the edit page. So I'm going to log in as Brad. But if I go to John's post, I can visit the edit page, and we shouldn't be able to do that. So what we'll do is go to our edit route in stories. Okay, so it's going to be the get request just to show the form, and we're getting the story right here. Okay, we're getting it back, and then we just want to say if story dot user is not equal to request.user.id. So we're saying if the story's user is not equal to the user that's logged in, then actually what we'll do is put an else here, and we'll put the render there. But if it's not equal, then we want to redirect. So we'll say res.redirect, and we'll just redirect them back to stories. Okay, so let's save that. We're going to have to log back in. Okay, so we'll go to our stories, and let's try to edit John's post, and we can't. It just brings us back to stories. If we go to our own, however, we can. All right, now let's take care of the icon, because this shouldn't even be here if it's not our story. Now this is going to be the last handlebars helper that we create. So let's go into helpers, get rid of that. Let's go into helpers HBS, and let's go down to the bottom here. We're going to add one called edit icon. All right, so this edit icon is going to take in a few things. It's going to take in story user, which is the user that created the story. It's going to take in the logged user. So whatever user is logged in, it's going to take the story ID, and then it's going to take a true or false option called floating, because I want to use this on both the floating icon, and also on the show page I want to have it here, an edit icon, if it's that user's story. So floating is going to be set to true by default. All right, and then what we want to do is just basically check to see if the story user, so if the story user is equal to the logged user, and then we'll put an else here. All right, so if it is the user's story, then we're going to also check if it's floating. Okay, if floating is true, and that will also have an else. Okay, so if it's floating, then we want to return. Okay, let's return a template string. So we're going to put in some backticks here, and we're going to put in some HTML. So we want an A tag. It's going to go to stories/edit/ and then it's going to be the story ID. So we'll put that in as a variable, story ID, and we'll give this a class of btn, actually btn-floating, and also halfway-fab. Okay, also red. We want it to be red. And then let's see, this is going to wrap an icon. So put an I tag with a class. Class is going to be FA, and let's see, it's going to be FA pencil. So FA dash pencil. Oops. Okay, we'll end that. And that should be good. So that's our floating button. Now, if it's not floating, then let's see, we're just going to, let's just copy this whole thing. And if it's not floating, we're going to just take away, let's see, we're going to take away the A tags class, all of this. It's just going to be a simple A tag with an href, and then it's going to wrap the pencil icon. All right, now else, then all we want to do is return nothing. Okay, so that should do it. Let's save it. And now let's go, let's see, let's go to views, stories, index.handlebars. And let's go to where we have the button or the link, which is right here. Now we want to get rid of this, and we only want this to show if the user's logged in, okay? Because right now, if we look, we're not logged in right now, but there's still edit buttons. So let's first of all do that. All right, and then inside here, what we'll do is we're going to use triple curly brace, and we're going to say edit icon. This isn't going to work yet because we haven't registered it yet in app.js, but we'll do that in a second. Now, the reason we're using triple is because this return, this includes HTML, and we want to parse that HTML. So we use triple curly braces. Now, remember what it takes in. It takes in the story user, and it's going to take in the logged user and the story ID. Floating is true by default, so we don't need to add that in. So let's put in the story user, which is going to be user .id. Now, the reason it's user.id is because we're inside of a loop. Okay, so if this was a single page, we would say story.user.id, but since we're in the stories loop, we don't add the story dot. So that's the story user. Now, the registered user, remember, we have a global variable called user, and that includes the logged in user's information. Now, we're inside of this each loop scope right here. So when we say user.id, it's actually the story.user.id. Now, to go outside of its scope into the global scope, we need to do .. and then user.id. That'll get the global user ID, which will be the registered one. And then we just need the story ID, which we can get with ID. Okay, again, we don't have to do story.id because we're inside of this loop right here. All right, so that should do it for this. Now we need to register that edit icon helper. So let's go to our app.js and let's bring it in here. So let's see, edit icon, and then we need to bring it in up here as well and save. All right, so let's try this out. We'll reload. Now we're not logged in, so we shouldn't see any edit icons. Let's go ahead and log in as Brad. Keep getting these things. So if we log in as Brad and we go back to our public stories, and there we go. So now John, his story does not have an edit icon. So that's exactly what we want. We can just edit our own stories. All right, so now what I want to do is on the show page, if this is our story, we should have a little icon here. So let's go to the show template, and let's go up to the top where we have our story title, and we're going to use the edit icon helper again. So let's see, inside the H3, let's go on a new line, make sure you're inside the H3, and we're going to put a small tag. Okay, and then inside here, we're going to use our triple curly brace, and we're going to say edit icon. We want to pass in the story user ID. Now, since we're not inside of that loop, then we use story.user.id. Okay, now to get the logged in user's ID, we now have access to that global user variable, so user ID. And then to get the story ID itself, we'll say story.id. And then we don't want this to be a floating button, so we're going to pass in false. All right, so let's save that. Let's reload. And there we go. Now we have an edit button. But if we go to John's post, no edit button. All right, so that's exactly what I wanted to accomplish. In the next video, we're going to make it so that we can get pages. We can have a page where it just lists stories of specific users or of a specific user.